My roommate was stealing my things, and when I confronted them, I found out more than I bargained for. You think you know someone, right? Well, I thought I knew my roommate. We had been living together for over a year, and despite the usual little annoyances, I thought we were good friends. That is, until I started noticing small things missing from my room, items I was certain I hadn't misplaced. At first, I brushed it off, but then the missing things piled up, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. So I confronted my roommate. What I discovered when I did took me by complete surprise. It wasn't just about a few missing things. It was a whole web of secrets I wasn't prepared for. It all started with a small realization. One day, I went to grab my favorite hoodie from the back of my chair, and it was gone. I wasn't too worried at first. Maybe I'd taken it to the laundry or left it somewhere else. But then the same thing happened a few days later. My headphones disappeared, then a small bottle of cologne I always kept on my dresser. I figured it was a coincidence, but after the third or fourth item vanished, I began to suspect that something wasn't right. It wasn't the items themselves. Most of them were things I could easily replace. It was the principle of it. I lived with my roommate, and we'd always had an unspoken agreement about respecting each other's things. So when these small items kept vanishing, I felt a mix of confusion and growing frustration. At first, I tried to reason with myself. Maybe I was just forgetful. Maybe I'd lent something out and forgotten about it. But as time passed, I started to feel paranoid. The missing items started to pile up, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being taken advantage of. I was growing suspicious, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. After all, we had been living together for over a year without any major issues. So I decided to do something I never thought I would have to do. I started keeping track of my things. I made mental notes of where I kept everything, and I even took photos of certain items to be sure they were there. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I had this nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. A few days later, I was sitting at my desk, working on some assignments, when I heard my roommate Max rummaging around in the kitchen. I'd been in the apartment for a while and never really thought much about what he did in his free time. But that day, I noticed something odd. He was acting a little too casually, almost too comfortable. Later that night, when I returned to my room, I noticed something strange. My camera, one that I kept on my dresser, was out of place. It had been moved. The lens cap was missing, and it was in a different position than I remembered. My heart sank. I went over to my desk and checked a few more things. Sure enough, my favorite notebook, one with all my sketches, was also in a different spot. Something was off. I had made the decision to keep track of my things, and I was starting to feel more and more uneasy. I didn't want to accuse anyone without being sure, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that Max had something to do with it. A few more days went by, and the missing items continued to disappear, little things that no one else could have easily taken. That's when I finally made up my mind. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to confront Max. It was a Saturday evening when I finally decided to do it. I had been collecting enough evidence in my mind that I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I had no idea what to expect from Max's reaction, but I knew this conversation had to happen. I found him sitting on the couch, playing video games as usual. His headphones were on, and he didn't notice me at first. I stood there for a moment, gathering my thoughts before I finally spoke up. "Max, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice calm but firm. He paused the game and turned to me, pulling his headphones off. "What's up?" I sat down across from him, looking him straight in the eye. "I've noticed something strange lately. My stuff keeps disappearing, and I'm starting to think I know who's taking it." Max's expression shifted just slightly. There was a flicker of discomfort, but it was so quick that I almost missed it. He leaned back, trying to play it cool. "What do you mean? Are you saying I've been taking your stuff?" I didn't back down. "Yes, I am, and I want to know why." He looked at me for a moment, eyes avoiding mine, clearly not expecting me to call him out. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Look, man, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Maybe you're just misplacing things." I could feel the tension building. I wasn't going to let him brush me off anymore. "I'm not misplacing things, Max. I've been keeping track. I noticed my camera moved, my headphones disappeared, and now my notebook is gone. This isn't just a coincidence?" Max didn't say anything for a long time, and just when I thought he was about to deny it all, he finally spoke. Okay. I didn't think you'd find out, but look, I've been struggling lately." The words came out slower than usual, like he was trying to figure out what to say. "Struggling with what?" I asked, not sure what to expect. He shifted again, and I could see his hands trembling. I've got some personal stuff going on, money problems, and I didn't want to ask you for help, so I took some of your stuff. I didn't think it would get this bad, but I swear I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought I could sell a few things and make it work. I felt the air leave my lungs as the truth hit me. Max had been stealing my things, not out of malice, but because he was struggling financially. It didn't make it right, but it suddenly made sense. He was trying to survive, and he had resorted to stealing from me to get by. As I sat there, processing Max's confession, a mix of emotions washed over me. I was angry, yes, but I also felt a little sympathetic. He had admitted to taking my things because of financial struggles, and part of me understood the pressure that could come with money problems. Still, it didn't make it okay. What had happened was wrong, and he had betrayed my trust. Max, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I get that you're struggling, but what you did, it's not how you handle things. You don't take someone's personal belongings and sell them, especially not someone you live with. He looked down, his shoulders slumped in shame. I know, and I'm really sorry. I never meant to put you in this position. I didn't know how else to fix things. I thought maybe if I could get some quick cash, I could make it all go away. I thought you wouldn't notice. I shook my head, trying to calm myself down. It's not just about the stuff, Max. It's about the fact that you didn't trust me enough to come to me. We're roommates, and we're supposed to be looking out for each other. But you kept this secret from me. You hid it from me. Max's voice was almost pleading now. I didn't want to be a burden to you. I didn't want you to think I was irresponsible. I just didn't know who else to turn to. Why didn't you just talk to me? I asked, frustrated. We've been living together for over a year, and we've always gotten along. You should have come to me before it got this bad. I could have helped, or we could have figured something out together. Max didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at the floor, taking in my words. Finally, he looked up at me, his face full of regret. I didn't want you to see me like this. I didn't want you to see how messed up everything was. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I get it, I do. But trust is important, Max. Without it, we can't live together, we can't be friends, and we definitely can't be roommates. There was a long silence, and I could feel the weight of the moment. It wasn't just about the missing items anymore. It was about the relationship we had, the respect we owed each other. I understand if you want me to move out, Max said quietly. I messed up. I don't know what I was thinking. But I'll figure it out. I'll take responsibility for what I've done. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope that one day you can. It hurt to hear him say that. I didn't want to lose him as a friend, but I also knew things could never go back to normal immediately. I needed time to process everything, to decide what was best for both of us. I don't know what to do right now, I admitted, but you have to start making things right. First, give me back the things you took. You need to show me that you can be honest with me moving forward. Max nodded, his eyes filled with remorse. I will. I promise. The next few days were filled with tension. Max didn't leave the apartment, and I didn't ask him to. We both needed time to process what had happened. The trust between us was broken, and while I wasn't ready to completely cut him out of my life, things were definitely different now. I spent the next few days going over what Max had said, weighing my options, and figuring out how to handle the situation. Max, to his credit, did everything he said he would. He started returning the things he had taken, my camera, my headphones, my notebook, one by one. It was painful to see those items come back, because every time I touched them, I was reminded of the betrayal. But I also saw that Max was genuinely trying to make things right. He apologized every time he handed something over, his face full of regret. I appreciated his efforts, but part of me still couldn't shake the feeling of being taken advantage of. Even though he was returning the things, I couldn't help but feel like the relationship had changed irreparably. I had trusted him like family, and now that trust had been shattered. A few days later, Max and I had another conversation. This time, we sat down to talk about the future. I needed to figure out what to do next and whether or not I could continue living with him. I'm willing to help you with your debt, Max, I said, trying to keep my voice even. But we need boundaries. I can't keep living like this. You have to be transparent with me. No more secrets, no more hiding things. And if you want to stay here, we need to set some ground rules. Max looked up at me, his face full of gratitude. I get it, I really do, and I'm sorry. I know I've broken your trust, and I'll do everything I can to make it right. I don't want to lose this place, and I don't want to lose you as a friend." I nodded slowly, thinking about everything we'd been through. "We can try to make this work, but it's going to take time. I need to know you're committed to changing. You need to start by being honest with yourself, and with me." Max agreed, and we spent the rest of the evening discussing a plan for him to get on top of his finances. He agreed to start budgeting, meeting with a financial advisor, and paying back the debt he had accumulated. He also promised to be more open about his situation and communicate with me if things ever got bad again. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Weeks passed, and while Max was trying to make progress, the road was far from smooth. There were moments when I thought he had really turned a corner, like when he sat down with a financial advisor and made an official budget, or when he found a second job to pay off some of the debt faster. I could see the effort, and part of me began to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild our friendship. But there were also setbacks. Max would sometimes slip into old habits, ignoring small payments, not communicating when things got tight, or avoiding talking about finances altogether. Each time he fell short, I could feel the trust I was trying to rebuild slowly slipping away. One night, about a month after everything came to light, I came home late from work to find Max sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. There was something about his posture, slumped shoulders, a tense expression, that immediately made me feel uneasy. I knew something was off. "Hey, everything all right?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I dropped my bag by the door. Max looked up, his eyes tired. "Yeah, everything's fine, just a bit of a setback with the payment I made last week. I miscalculated, and now I have to find a way to make up the difference." I could tell he wasn't being completely honest. He was avoiding my gaze, fiddling with his phone a little too much. It was clear he was hiding something, and I wasn't about to let it slide. "Max, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm. He sighed deeply, setting his phone down. "I'm sorry, I've been trying so hard to fix everything, but it just feels like I can't catch a break." "I get that things are tough," I said, sitting down beside him. "But you've got to be more upfront with me. We agreed that there would be no more secrets, and yet here we are. What's really going on?" He ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "I missed a payment on one of the credit cards. The debt collectors are starting to call again. I didn't want to tell you, but I knew I had to. It's just overwhelming." I could feel my heart sink. As much as I wanted to support him, I also felt betrayed again. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the broken promises, the lack of transparency. "Max, we're supposed to be in this together. You can't keep avoiding this. You need to tell me when things aren't going well. I can't be here for you if you're not being honest." He looked up at me, his eyes full of guilt. "I know. I just didn't want to disappoint you again. I've already messed up so much, and I didn't want to add to it." I paused, thinking about everything. "Look, I'm not mad, but this can't keep happening. You have to show me that you're taking this seriously. Not just for yourself, but for the sake of our friendship. I'm not going to keep forgiving this if you keep hiding things from me." Max nodded, his voice small. "I get it. I'll do better. I'll get back on track." I wanted to believe him. I did. But the truth was, I was exhausted. I had been patient, I had been supportive, but I didn't know how much longer I could keep picking up the pieces for him. The future of our living situation and our friendship felt uncertain. As much as I wanted to help Max, the weight of everything was starting to break me. I had been patient, understanding, and supportive, but at what point did my own well-being matter? I couldn't keep carrying the burden of his mistakes, especially when it seemed like things weren't improving. Max had made some progress, but it wasn't enough. Every time he made a small mistake, it felt like the foundation we were trying to build together was cracking again. A few weeks after that conversation, I came home early from work one afternoon. Max wasn't in the living room like usual. I walked into the kitchen and froze. There, on the counter, was a stack of unopened bills, including one from a debt collector. My stomach twisted. I hadn't expected this. I picked up the bills, each one marked with a bold, final notice, stamped in red. It hit me like a slap in the face. The debt wasn't going away. It wasn't something Max was fixing. It was something that kept growing. My hand shook as I opened one of the letters. The balance due was more than I could ever help him pay off in the time we had left on our lease. The gravity of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. When Max came home later, I confronted him immediately. I wasn't angry. I was just exhausted. Max, I found the bills. Why didn't you tell me? He looked at me, eyes wide with shock. I didn't think you'd understand. I didn't want to disappoint you again. Max, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This has gone on long enough. You can't keep hiding this from me. The bills keep piling up, and I don't know if I can keep dealing with this. He tried to defend himself, but the words felt empty. I've been working so hard, man. I'm doing everything I can to get this under control. It's just taking longer than I thought. But I couldn't do it anymore. I had been understanding, patient, and supportive, but there was only so much I could do. I can't keep living like this, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You need to make a decision, get serious about fixing this, or we're going to have to figure something else out. Max didn't say anything for a long time. The room was thick with tension, and I could feel the weight of the decision that was hanging over us. Finally, he nodded, but I could tell he was defeated. I get it, he said softly. I'll do whatever I can to fix this. The days following our confrontation were tense. Max kept his word, or at least he tried to. He started meeting with a financial advisor, working on a plan to pay off his debt, and even began cutting back on his spending. I saw glimpses of the person I had trusted, someone who was trying to take responsibility, but I couldn't shake the doubt that lingered in the back of my mind. We continued living together, but the dynamic was different now. There was a sense of distance between us that wasn't there before. I wasn't sure if I could ever fully trust him again, but I wasn't ready to throw away everything we had. Still, I needed to see real, lasting change from Max before I could move forward without feeling like I was walking on eggshells. One evening, I came home after a long day, tired and ready to just relax. But when I walked into the apartment, I saw Max sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through papers. There was something different about him that night. He looked more focused, more determined. The usual weight of guilt that had been hanging over him seemed to have lifted, and there was a sense of purpose in his eyes that I hadn't seen in months. "Hey, how's it going?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Max looked up at me and smiled. It wasn't a smile filled with guilt or shame, but one that actually seemed genuine. "It's going good. I finally got my budget in order, and I've paid off one of the smaller loans. It's not much, but it's a start." I stood there for a moment, taking it in. It was the first time in weeks that I felt a flicker of hope. "That's great," I said, sitting down next to him. "It's progress. Keep going." "I will," he replied, his voice steady. "I'm not going to give up. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm going to make it right." And for the first time, I believed him. It wasn't about being perfect or solving everything overnight. It was about showing up, taking responsibility, and taking action to make a change. It was clear that Max was serious about turning his life around, and that was something I could respect. Things didn't magically fix themselves overnight. Rebuilding trust takes time, and so did Max's efforts to get his finances in order. But over the next few months, I watched him continue to follow through on his promises. He stuck to his budget, communicated openly with me about his progress, and gradually started to regain some control over his debt. I could see the weight lifting off his shoulders, but I could also see the effort it took. We started having more honest conversations about money, about his past mistakes, and how we could work together moving forward. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always comfortable, but it was necessary. And slowly we began to rebuild a sense of normalcy in our living situation. There was still a lot of tension at times, especially when we'd hit a rough patch or when an unexpected bill would show up, but we tackled those issues together. What I realized through all of this was how much I had learned about myself in the process. I had been so focused on fixing Max, on helping him, that I hadn't stopped to think about how much I had been affected by the situation. I needed to set boundaries for my own peace of mind, and I had to find a balance between being supportive and protecting myself. I also realized how important it was to have open, honest conversations about money and trust, especially with the people closest to you. I had been too passive at times, letting my own discomfort or fear of confrontation prevent me from speaking up when things didn't feel right. But now, I knew that communication was key, whether in friendships, relationships, or living situations. Max wasn't perfect, but he was making an effort, and for the first time in months, I felt like we were on the same team again. As the months went on, Max and I settled into a new routine. The tension from before had started to fade, And though things weren't exactly the same as they had been before, all the chaos, there was a sense of mutual understanding that hadn't been there before. It was clear that we both had learned a lot about each other and about ourselves. Max was still working hard to pay off his debt, and while it was a slow process, I could see that he was genuinely committed to making it right. There were days when it felt like a struggle, but there was progress, and that was enough for me. I had also made it clear that while I was willing to support him emotionally, I couldn't do the heavy lifting for him. This was his responsibility now. One afternoon, as we were sitting on the couch watching TV, Max turned to me with a hesitant look. "I know I've messed up, but I want you to know that I appreciate you sticking around. I've been thinking about everything, about how much you've helped me, and about how I want to make things right." I looked over at him, not sure where this was going. "Max, you don't need to thank me for helping. We're roommates and friends, but I think you've made the right choices lately. You're taking responsibility, and that's what matters." He smiled weakly. I don't want you to think I took advantage of you, or that I've been using you this whole time. I know it wasn't just about the money. It was about everything I did to you, and I'm sorry for that." The apology wasn't easy for him to give, but it was sincere. I could feel it in his voice. "Max, I'm not going to pretend it didn't hurt, but I think I understand now. We all mess up, but what matters is what we do afterward. I'm glad you're trying to make things right." He nodded, looking relieved, as though he was finally able to breathe again. "I'll keep working on myself. Thanks for giving me a second chance." At that moment, I realized that while things might never go back to how they were before, they didn't have to. We both had grown, and we had learned to communicate better and set boundaries. And maybe that was what was most important. Looking back on everything, I realized that trust, once broken, isn't something that can be easily repaired. It takes time, effort, and sometimes distance. But I also learned that sometimes we can rebuild if both parties are willing to put in the work. I wasn't just rebuilding my trust in Max, I was rebuilding my trust in myself, learning to set boundaries, and understanding my own needs in a relationship. If you've ever found yourself in a situation where someone close to you broke your trust, how did you handle it? Did you give them a second chance, or did you walk away? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more personal growth and life lessons. Thanks for reading.